Today, I want to discuss a few things that are top of mind, and I really believe that there are three key things that AI is actually changing. My name is Andre, and I'm a builder. Ever since I was a young kid, I really enjoyed taking things apart, seeing what makes them tick, and putting them back together. I've also really enjoyed finding new use for old things. That's why I love old technology as much as I love new technology. Over my years, I have been in financial services, I've been a software engineer, and also a sales engineer with two leading technology companies. Let's go together on this journey and learn how to build a brighter future. So, number one, I would say, is demands for AI in the workplace are increasing, and that much is should be pretty obvious to everybody at this point. But why I'm bringing this up is because there's going to be an increasing need for skills around how to use and leverage AI, and I think that's where there's a bit of a critical difference there around just being aware of it and understanding that, I can actually make this part of who I am at work. And I think that brings up a really good point is that understanding how to work with it, I think, is something that's still fairly nebulous for a lot of folks and poorly misunderstood for that matter. So it kind of falls into two camps the way that I see it. I see it as on the one side, we've got the camp who are actively developing AI products in the workplace. And I think that is a very important camp and a very important skill to have. But the second one, and the one less talked about, and the one I think that affects more people, is the side of AI when it comes to how to use and leverage AI. And I think that's the more relevant one for most people. And I'm just going to quickly address both of those. So on the one side, when it comes to building AI, it's becoming much easier in a sense, because what we're doing is we're building future AI applications for the workplace on top of existing foundations. And they're called foundation models for a reason, is that they're kind of a jack of all trades. So those are like the chat GPTs, those are the clouds, those are the llamas, and they're general purpose language models, largely because that is the core driver and the core engine behind a lot of generative AI. I'm not saying all generative AI is language model based, like there's others, there's stable diffusion and so forth and so on, but generally speaking, language models are really what's driving generative AI and AI as we colloquially know it. And that's really important because when we're talking about building, we don't have to build from the ground up anymore. We do have a solid foundation or a groundwork to build off of, which is really important because now what it allows us to do is it allows us to start essentially at a common ground and start building up from there and in different directions. So understanding that when we're talking about building AI products, I think is really important because we're starting to see this iteration and development of AI products going faster and faster, simply because we have a pretty good scaffolding at this point. Now, on the other side of the coin, we've also got a situation where AI is becoming increasingly important in the workplace and how to use it. And that's where my first recommendation comes in, is if you're unsure about where do I go in terms of like building my AI skill set, I would say the number one thing to do, honestly, is just to build your skills in prompt engineering. Prompt engineering essentially is how you structure your questions or your chat or your dialogue with AI in such a way that you get some type of desirable output. So a good example that would be understanding the difference between zero shot and few shot prompt engineering. What that means in the context of like how I want a language model or a chatbot more specifically to respond. Conversation history and buffer and validating conversation chain is also really important. So, we've all heard in the news there are these situations where language models start hallucinating over time. Do language models and generative AI hallucinate just at random? Absolutely. But you need to understand how to validate that and how to look for it and what kind of markers are going to indicate a hallucination, even if you're not 100% sure of whether or not the statement of fact is true or false. You can kind of get a sense from language models in how they respond, whether or not they're making something up versus when they're actually basing something in fact and evidence. And especially in my line of work, with the AI products that we're building, we always ask for some type of validity or validation that how you got to that answer, if that makes sense. And that's really important. So it's what we call provenance, or which is proof of source, really. So it's not just the lineage of how we went from data to answer, but more specifically, the line of reasoning and the logic behind it. And modern language models are getting better and better and better at explaining that. The second thing that I want to talk about in terms of AI in the workplace is looking for and understanding new opportunities. Is AI replacing jobs? Absolutely. The same could be said for any major technological revolution or evolution. Like we saw it with the internet era, where a lot of jobs were now obsolete or, no longer necessary because we had all this information at our fingertips all of a sudden. We're starting to see the same thing with AI. And I think for those of us who are really keen on, getting in the workforce and, being really competitive about it, there are lots of opportunities. They're just not opportunities that are, prescribed. They're not already established or in stone, if you will. There's a lot of opportunity right now with where generative AI is specifically in finding and creating new roles that take advantage of that. So I think that's the second most important point. And then the third major point that I want to make, using AI to help enhance your work. So I kind of alluded to this in the first section, but how you prompt and work with AI is very important. It's absolutely critical. From the simple understanding and from the simple fact that it can actually change for the better your workflow. If you look at AI in the sense of almost like a virtual assistant or, that robot that is, there helping you tirelessly, it can actually be a very effective tool and improve your productivity. So as an example, like how I, as an individual, use AI both as a productivity tool and to springboard my work and everything that I'm doing, is I actually use it in a sense to help me organize and keep track of my thoughts. So for example, a typical prompt for me would be like, hey, ChatGPT, this is my project. I have this particular outline. I need some help finding any flaws in my logic. And then I kind of go through and I explain my logic points and I say, please provide any valid counterpoints or arguments that a human might come back with or be concerned with. And so what that allows me to do is it allows me to actually formulate my argument, my presentations. It helps me prepare for meetings. Another good example would be to use AI to help you do things like prepare for a job interview. A good example would be like, hey, listen, I'm applying for a job at ABC company. Can you help me run through a sample interview so that I can assess my interview performance? And that again is a really good example of, I would say, a less common use for generative AI, but probably a more effective one. Another good one that I use actually on a day-to-day basis, I built a GPT agent to help me go through and optimize my day in terms of things like my emails, my calendar, as in my schedule, which is all in Google, and anything else I have going on. So if I have any things that I need to accomplish in the day, so for example, I'll say like, hey, ChatGPT, with my calendar and my email list that I have unread, can you help me plan out my day? But I also need to have some time dedicated to building this presentation. What would be an efficient layout for my day today to get all my tasks accomplished? And then I can use that almost as a template going forward. So those are really the three things. So number one is understanding how to work with AI. Number two, finding new opportunities in AI. And number three is improving our productivity and workflows in AI. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate you guys. Every view counts. Please like, please subscribe. Make sure you follow me on all the socials. I'm just getting this channel started. I really appreciate everything you guys are doing. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments or any suggestions on how we can leverage AI maybe in a different way that I haven't thought of, drop it in the comments down below. And we'll see you in the next one.